So with that being said, without further ado, I would like to keep going, start with the first session. So I would like to call on stage Tom Caton and Sophie Barton from AirDNA. Good.
Thanks very much.
You're very welcome. This is the key to everything.
Yeah.
Forward, backward.
Classic.
Don't press this,
Okay.
or it's auto-destruction.
What's forward? Forward is...
Forward is the green.
Okay. So, thanks very much for coming, everyone. Thanks, Antonio. Always puts on such a detailed session. I think the deadline for our presentation was about 6 months ago that you said it had to be ready. And it's ready today, so thanks for nagging. Are you coming to speak to me? No.
Yeah, the timer is there, you see.
Yeah, okay. So well done for putting it on, and these details matter, right? So you can see the agenda. He kind of forgot coffee breaks, as far as I can see, till 5 p.m., but he's put every other detail together. So April, May last year, many of you are business owners. I think you were probably doing what we at AirDNA were doing was, it's all over, isn't it? Travel was right down to zero. I think we made a list of all 40 people in the firm and in what order we'd have to let everyone go. And then when there was only Scott and I left, were we able to learn enough coding to keep the lights on for AirDNA? It seemed devastating times. But I think we're generally back. And I know if your properties are in an urban area, the struggle is still very much there. But we're going to run through a bit of the data today to look at, one, how things are shaping at the moment. Sophie is going to run through some of the things we've seen from our data that makes a successful listing. And then I'm going to do a bit on an outlook at the end. So let's crack on. So this is where we are today in Europe. This is comparing August of 2019, so the last summer before the fall, with this August. And we can see North America, actually, when we looked at these numbers for July, North America was right back up, but this particularly nasty Delta variant is still affecting vacation rentals. But if we look at occupancy, it's high, huh? So when we look at those numbers overall, what's really dragging them down is the urban markets. But when we take, as a whole, what's happening in occupancy, so many of those urban apartments have gone offline, and now we're able to look at apartments and see that occupancy is at record, outpacing the previous years. And then this picture is what we see really across Europe. We're doing it for France, but you can see Paris absolutely down still. This is for July still, but 50% down from previous, from 2019. But you can see all the regions are doing better. So my fond hope is if you have a non-urban environment for your listings, you're having a really good summer. And I think overall, we talk about it at AirDNA a lot, that we think this is going to be the best thing that could have ever happened to our industry when we look in the future. When we talk about these seismic events causing rapid change suddenly, so many people have now had the experience of a vacation rental. They'll learn to appreciate the kitchen, they'll learn to appreciate the lounge, appreciate the privacy. And for many years now, going to a hotel, I feel every time I stay, I feel the hotel shouting at me. It's, you need to wear your mask. I was staying in a hotel the other day, and I cancelled, there were 5 signs imploring me to be worried about COVID, and it was just me in my room. I'm aware that COVID has happened, and it just felt, it didn't feel a very liberating, free experience, but then you stay at a vacation rental, it's all, once you're in the door, it's all yours. So we think the best of times are ahead for this industry. And even those urban environments, when things recover a little, we think that people's experience of staying in for short-term lets is going to make them want to stay there more. So I hope that's true. And you can see these listing counts for France. It's a bit of a complicated chart. So the blue number is the one you need, is sort of the main net number of listings out there. And you can see there's still been growth. It hasn't tapered off during coronavirus times, but it's definitely, the growth has slowed. So in that chart, the green one is the net number, the yellow is the gross ad, and the dark blue is the one falling off. So listing counts are still robust. Okay, I'm going to hand you over to Sophie now, and she's going to talk through some of the particular features that make good vacation rentals.
Thank you.
Green one.
Do I sound okay? I think my mask
you sound great.
Thanks. So as short-term rentals become even more popular, the competition's hotting up. So it's even more important for property managers like you to understand what makes a successful listing. At AirDNA, we collect data on short-term rentals around the world, and we can see what the top-performing listings are doing and what they have in common. So today, we want to share with you what those traits are and how you can optimize your listings for your properties. Quality photos. It might seem obvious, but we've all seen the pictures. It's like a dark bedroom, an unmade bed, or a picture in a bathroom with half the hose still stood in it. It's not great, and when there's thousands of listings out there, it's just not going to make the cut. You're going to get scrolled straight past. So a Harvard study using AirDNA data found that good photos are the #1 way to increase revenue. So it really is worth spending that extra time and money to update your pictures, make sure that they're clear, make sure that they're bright, ideally with a warm hue, and from a complementary angle. So if a picture is worth 1,000 words, then make sure that your pictures are telling the right story. But it's not just the quality of the pictures, it's the numbers too. So the more pictures you have, the more a guest feels secure in the knowledge what they're going to get before they arrive. And the less photos you have, it seems like you've got something to hide. So you can see here, properties in France that had 6 or more photos had 54% occupancy rate or more. And you can see as the more photos that you have, the higher the occupancy rate gets. Okay, make it easy to book your property. So enabling Instant Book allows guests to book your property immediately without waiting for confirmation from the host. It happened to me recently. I booked a property, I arranged all the travel around that particular property, only for a few days later to receive a rejection email saying, oh, sorry, actually, this property isn't available. And guests get burned by those experiences, and they don't want them to happen again, so they avoid it in the future, and they make a filter for these instant book properties. So if you have that enabled, then you're going to be included in that search. Don't remove yourself from those search lists. And you can see here in France that it is catching on over the years. People are adding Instant Book, but still it's only 50% of properties that have actually got this feature. So if you have that enabled, then you really are going to stand out, and you've got that opportunity to make 5.7% more occupancy. Okay, cancellation policies. Where do you all stand? Here in France, it looks like the majority, 39%, have a strict cancellation policy, closely followed by 37%, which have a flexible cancellation policy. So it's understandable guests want more flexibility, they want to be able to change their mind before the reservation, whereas a host would prefer a more strict policy, so they can guarantee that booking and guarantee that revenue in the future. So if we take a look a bit further, this graph on the left, we're looking at occupancy rates of different cancellation policies, and you can see that the firm cancellation policy have the highest occupancy rates in France over the summer. And you can see the blue line, this is showing the average daily rates, so the pricing. So properties with those higher prices have a more strict policy. And we do tend to see that in most markets, because the more you've got to gain, the more you've got to lose. So people want to avoid that and put a stricter policy. And if we take a look at this graph on the right, you can see we've got RevPAR, so that's, for us, revenue per available rental rather than room. And this is basically combining rates and occupancy rates. You can see, yeah, that firm cancellation policy have the highest. But interestingly, when we're looking at comparing this to the same point in time in 2019, you can see they've had quite a few losses in performance, all except flexible policies. So what that means is, yeah, you're still going to suffer a little bit from having a flexible cancellation policy, but not as much as you did in 2019. So maybe you could think about changing to a more lenient cancellation policy. Okay. Ratings and reviews. It can make or break your listing. So the better the reviews, obviously, the more appealing your listing looks. And it's important to make sure those guests feel love. So what this graph is showing you, we're looking at the overall ratings of properties, and we've split that by the size of the property manager. So the blue dots, these are hosts with 1 unit. The red dot is hosts with 2 to 5 units. The yellow is 6 to 20. And the grey are the larger property managers with 21 or more units. And you can see here, like, if we just look at this year, for example, the overall rating that individual hosts are getting are like reaching 9.6 out of 10, which is pretty great. But as the larger the property manager gets, the lower the ratings get, even down to like 8.8 out of 10. So that's a pretty big difference. And it's important that you don't let your standards fall the bigger your portfolio gets. You've got to make sure that guest feels the love, and they show that in the reviews as well. And it looks like individual hosts are leading the way, but in every single category as well. So what this is showing you, we've broken it down into each individual category, and the bars are showing, again, smaller property managers to larger property managers. So you can see we've got accuracy, check-in, communication, location, and value, and then the overall rating. So yeah, the larger the property manager is, the lower the ratings are. So it's important as a group of property managers, like, what can you do? What are the key things you can do to make this guest experience better? So accuracy, like, is your listing depicting the property well? So can you update the photos? Can you update the listing, like the description, the title? Check-ins. Is there anyone checking them in at all? If there is, then maybe that could be improved as well. Are they as welcoming as they could be? Communication. So it's super important before the reservation that you have communication, but also during that reservation. They want to feel, a guest wants to feel like they can speak to someone at any point, so make sure those channels are open. And value. This is especially bad for larger property managers. Guests feel like they're not getting as much value from the property. So could you maybe rethink the pricing of your properties? Maybe you're priced a little bit too high for them or for that particular property. If you have no wiggle room in that pricing, then is there other ways you can show value in that listing, in that property? So maybe a welcome basket to make the guests feel that love. I don't know, with shampoo or soaps, anything like that to make them feel
and I think that's
love.
something we talk about a lot at AirDNA, is just we property managers as a group are just kind of failing to keep up with the little guys through all your processes, through all your expertise, but that personal touch is just outranking all the efficiencies you make as a group of property managers. So when you think about what you're presenting, is these things when you go as a guest and you get that little slip of silver shampoo, you think, oh, couldn't you just give me a bottle? Or those kind of tips that a local host has. And so I don't think you can ever provide the personal service when someone is letting out their own house or their one cottage at the corner of the garden. But if you could take one thing away from this presentation, we think, it's just how can you replicate what an individual does? And it's probably not through more tech, it's probably through more thought into what the experience the guest goes through, from the check-in to the things around the place. Just sometimes I think maybe you can save too much through efficiency and you'll lose that in your ratings, and then you'll lose money because you won't be able to attract the same kind of prices. And we talked about value a bit. Value is the one, maybe you are doing a good job because you're price maximizing. I think that's the area you'd be least concerned about. But those other areas is something you can definitely work on to bring it up to the standards of much smaller hosts. Sorry,
Yeah.
Sophie.
No. And yeah, in an industry that's so dependent on reviews, it really is important that you keep those guests happy. Cleaning fees. So cleaning fees, it has the potential, if you play it right, to make yourself a bit more income. But you want to make sure you're not completely outpricing yourself to at the higher end of cleaning fees so that you're being overlooked by the people by guests. So when we take a look at properties in France, so these are just split by the size of the properties. If we look at the median, studios are €25, 2 beds are 45, 3 beds 60, 4 beds at 80, and 5 plus at 120. So it's important to look at your market, your property sizes, and see what those ranges are, to make sure see where you fit and where you want to fit. So what we did is we looked at 2-bedroom properties in Paris, just as an example, and we looked at these properties that had good cleaning ratings and bad cleaning ratings, and then split them by the level of cleaning fees, like the price of their cleaning fees. So what does this tell us? If we look at the lower end of cleaning fees, properties with under 40 euros a night, they actually had the highest occupancy rates out of all of the group. And even when it came to like high prices, so we're looking here at 195, with the lowest cleaning fees, it didn't seem to make an effect that their prices were higher. They actually had the highest occupancy rates. So guests are looking for this, are looking at who's got the highest, who's got the lowest. And then, so yeah, if you want to use that tactic of bringing in more occupancy, you can think about lowering those cleaning fees because guests are paying attention. And then also we've got the high cleaning fees, so over 100 euros a night. And just look at the difference between properties that had a bad rating for cleaning and properties that had a good rating for cleaning. So it's 56 versus 140 in RevPAR. I mean, that's quite a big difference. But what this tells us is people are willing to pay for these higher cleaning fees, but you've got to back it up. You've got to deliver on the cleanliness so that you get those good ratings.
And I think cleaning fees have been something that have evolved in time with short-term rentals because initially, I remember when I used to run a property, it was like a secret profit centre. Like you could sort of jack up your rates quite nicely on the cleaning fee. But I think over time, people have become more aware of those add-ons when they put everything together. Particularly those add-ons are so much higher now because there's obviously the occupancy tax that's often in, as well as the cleaning fee. So I think what worked with cleaning fees some years ago maybe doesn't work now. So you have to just view holistically that if you have a lower cleaning fee, you can probably charge a higher nightly rate to offset it. So that's something to think about how things have changed over time.
Mm-hmm. And finally is dynamic pricing. So hosts and property managers that use dynamic pricing outperform the rest. You can earn up to 40% more revenue if you use dynamic pricing. And what this means is adjusting your rates regularly to take into account different factors such as seasonality throughout the year, big events, what else? The future demand and also the booking lead time, so how far in advance the booking is. And this is an example of a individual host trying to do this manually compared to our dynamic pricing, which is smart rates. And this is just an example. You can see that the blue line is the host that's manually updating the prices. And they've done a good job of seeing where the high demand days are, but they're missing out overall on about 20% of revenue potential. And even if you see further out, they're missing out on these high demand days that they've completely missed. So it is important, like you feel like you understand your market, but you're just not going to match the sophistication of dynamic pricing tools nowadays. So yeah, it's just a simple click of a button, and you could have up to 40% more revenue potential.
I think as experienced property managers, if you're not doing it, you've certainly looked at it or developed something in-house. But it was staggering that 50% of the hosts in Annecy have the same rate for the entire year round. So when we looked at the other things where maybe larger property managers are at a disadvantage, here is something you can so easily implement. I'm sure most of you have already, and if you haven't, think about how you can implement this into it, because it's such an easy gain to make. Sorry, Sophie. Oh, it's over to me. So we also wanted to look at trends that have been related to COVID. So we had before a look at the overall numbers, but just looking at how trends have changed over size, what's changed with reviews, what amenities have become more important, and this theme of unique stays that we'll get onto. So the larger the home, the better performance. Now, as property managers, this is maybe relevant as you have a choice as to the properties you take on. I was once laughed at by someone for for saying this to them because they owned a one-bed apartment. They said, well, what am I going to do? Just like add on 4 extra bedrooms. So it's not practical if you own the apartment, but it's definitely something to think about. Unsurprisingly, shared rooms have not been a great success during COVID, but you can see that it's definitely an impact. The larger places have done better over the recent period. Now, we talked about cleanliness before, and it's always been important, and it's not earth-shattering news to know how it is even more important before. So these are cleanings over the years and how the difference that a good cleaning fee has made. So we've got the red one, which is 6 and less, green 7 and 8, 9 and above. But the most important thing to consider is the delta is much higher than it used to be. So what did you say, a 9-10 score adds 2.3% over in the previous years. Now it adds 7%. So whatever calculation you made about how much to clean your property versus the price of doing it, the basis has changed in recent years. So cleanliness is more important. Now I know you can't have like 5 people working 8 hours to make the property perfectly clean. There's some level of, occasionally there will be a hair somewhere that you can't account for. But whatever your calculation was before, you need to slightly readjust that. Okay, and then what amenities have been hot? So in 2020, the hot one was the swimming pool. So that was the biggest revenue driver. But actually in 2021, and once again, like if you don't have a swimming pool, that's quite an undertaking to build a swimming pool, even if you have the space. But this one is one that we can all think about implementing more. Just, the summers have got so much hotter that by implementing air conditioning, you'd have 8% higher demand in 2021 compared to, it's relative compared to 2020. It's the number one desired amenity for 2021. So that's something to really think about. I mean, if only in the bedroom maybe, and particularly people coming from countries where they're very accustomed to air conditioning and coming to a place where there isn't one, it really can infuriate them. They really struggle to sleep well in these things. So that is... we talked about the cleanliness being one thing to take away and how to be more like a small manager, but also just think about air conditioning. Okay, and then the other big trend that's happened during COVID, it's been going on for a while, is people love a unique stay. And you can see how demand has changed for unique stays. It's just far outstripping all the more usual properties. What is a unique stay? And this is Airbnb's definition. Remember, we take our data from Airbnb and Vrbo in the main. So, a farm stay, a tree house, a castle, any of these properties, if you see them come available and you're considering taking them on as a property manager, not on a well-performing, we don't see this trend going anywhere. The kind of uniqueness, this kind of Instagram idea, showing everyone where you're staying, you want it to be different and special. Okay, and we've hardly tooted our own horn about what AirDNA does, but I don't know if any of you have been on our site recently. Something we really tried hard on recently is to think about how you're doing versus your competition. So now, when you upload your property to our site, we tailor a list of the 20, 25 comps, and we see how you're doing all the time on your booking features and the revenue you're taking in. So if you haven't been on our site in a while, it's a good one to look at, because when we're talking about these trends, that's where it's going to manifest itself, is there has been so much demand over the years. AirDNA has built itself off maybe how the market in Annecy is doing. We've tried really hard, had so many requests that maybe you don't care how Annecy's doing, because you're in the 4-bedroom house market, so does it matter how 1-bedroom apartments are doing? So this is something that's been we've worked on for a while. So please have a look. We can give you a demo upstairs later. Okay, well, Antonio stole a lot of my time. We're almost out of time, so I'll just quickly go through what the outlook is. Oh, and it's tough. Okay, so here we are. What this is showing is on the 1st of September, what is the forward bookings for the future months versus 2019. So this is a single point in time. How are bookings looking for the rest of the year? September through November for 2019 versus 2021. And you can see in the UK and Germany, it's ahead of schedule. So they're doing super well. I don't know if many of you came from the UK. It's a real pain traveling abroad. So sort of the thinking about going over to Europe to travel, it's just more difficult. It was Alex, you were telling me earlier, you came here and apparently didn't have the right COVID test, off you went, whereas me with my Barcelona residency just flashed my QR code and effortlessly walked into the building. So, and in Germany also, there's much more domestic travel. So it's quite a bit behind, but this isn't necessarily the time to panic because lead times are much shorter. People have much less confidence of booking far in advance. So even if you're behind schedule now for the rest of the year, don't panic. You rarely go to a speech when they say this is the time to panic, but don't panic. It should be okay. We'll see what's coming down the line because with lead time shorter, and they are rising a little bit, that there's many last-minute holidays that would happen. So if you're comparing yourself to 2019, as lead times are much shorter, there's a lot more people yet to book a vacation, and they still might. So when we look in the end, I mean, this is how it will look if it proceeds as it did in 2019, but this is very unknowable because we don't know the impact of these shorter lead times. So there's a lot more holidays still to be booked that are out there. So best of luck for the rest of the year. And I think when we come back next year, we'll all be much more rosy-cheeked, I think, having had a good couple of years. And the sectoral shift to short-term rentals is going to continue, and I think we'll prosper for this in a long time. So thank you very much for your time. Right, it looks so Antonio's gone. So, any questions for the audience? I think we have some small time. Was that a hand up? Yeah. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah. I see. Here we go. Should it be possible to get? Yeah, we do have a link. Come and see us at the booth. We can send that. The Wi-Fi password doesn't. That one's all capitals. I had that problem. You need to do all capitals. VRWS2021. Any thoughts on how sustainability is going to drive demand, balance the aircon with climate emergency? Yeah, tough one. I mean, I think on the individual level, I think the future sustainability, maybe if you had your solar panels to offset your air conditioning. But I think many guests, it's so they understand the climate emergency, but I think having air conditioning overnight was probably, people haven't got into that level of conservation, perhaps. Okay, I think that's it. Antonio, thank you.
Can you? Okay. Yeah, so I just got in here. You addressed the two questions, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a link for the presentation. Can we broadcast it somehow? Or
yes, actually.
We'll try and do something on the app to get it out
all
there.
of you here, you have access to the VRWS platform as well, online, which means that we're going to just upload all these presentations for you to review at your own pace whenever you want. Just give us a few days, and you'll see them showing up as well.
Or message me or Sophie on the app, and we will come back with a link to the presentation. We've got a downloadable link.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Antonio.
Thank you so much, guys.